Welcome to Gaian Myths, weaving ancient future timelines, where we are reweaving the cultural narrative into the timelines of Mama Gaia that create the most peaceful and harmonious reality for all beings. Many of the ancient ways and myths of times past are resurfacing today because they teach us how to live in co-creation on this planet with each other and all beings, while at the same time, new structures and modalities need to be set in place. In the co-weaving of these living myths with the visionary, we remember our sacred purpose and place in the tapestry of all life. I'm Julia, Rose Priestess and Woman Ceremonialist, and today I am welcoming Elizabeth Bercovici to speak about Eden, the Holy Grail, and the soul of the world. Elizabeth Dillon Bercovici is a mythic storyteller, intuitive healer, writing coach, new paradigm teacher, and conduit for higher energies. She's a catalyst for soul growth and helps people to heal on a deep level through channeled activations and vortex healing, a special form of divine magic through the Merlin lineage. Her latest courses include Awakening Awen, The Way of the Bard, and Arthurian Myth and Magic. She's also the host and producer of 6 magical storytelling virtual summits, including High Magic Eden, Avalon and the Holy Grail, and Fairies and Fairy Tales. These were immersive experiences exploring the goddess Bridget, the Morrigan, the Fae, mythic storytelling, and Celtic lore. Elizabeth has an MFA in creative writing from Emerson College and a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature from Skidmore College. She has published 2 books, a children's book called The Fairy and the Firefly, and a handbook about herbal medicine entitled The Energetic Apothecary. She loves to help people with writing, storytelling, and birthing new creative projects. Oh my God, this is so amazing. Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm so honored to have you as a guest.
I'm so delighted and honored to be here. I just can feel the power and the energy of this event. And I'm just so delighted, so honored to be part of it. I can't wait to dive in and get started today.
Thank you for being here. And yeah, as we created this, like we knew that we have to bring stories to the forefront of people's heads. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here as a storyteller and to revive these myths and the magic that is stored in these codes.
Yeah, I mean, like right off the bat, what's kind of coming through is I think that the way that most people see stories, it's that you open a book and then you go into the magic and then like you put the book down and the magic is over there. But the thing is that like really stories throughout the ages, like oral lore, all the legends that we have told throughout time, there are sacred codes contained in these
Mm.
stories. Particularly, I talk about this a lot in the Arthurian legends. Everyone's like, why have we told these stories of King Arthur for like almost 2,000 years? Like, why do they never get old? And it's because there is magic, there are secret ancient codes contained in these stories. The stories really, even in the darkest of ages, throughout humanity's darkest moments, these stories they have contained all of the light codes for us to really come back together, even though it might be 2,000 years later, us to come back together as a society, as a world, to weave this light anew. And so,
Mm.
really, these stories, it's like they are these sacred containers. They have held the magic, they have held the light for centuries, for millennia. And that is part of why, like, the myths, the legends are so needed at this sacred event that you've put together.
Thank you. That is beautifully put. And I feel, especially this story or stories, it never gets old, right? We always get to, I mean, at least for me, and every time I go back to it, I discover something new and I discover like a deeper layer or another symbol that I haven't looked into before. So that's also the magic of these, yeah, these tales, I find.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one that's kind of coming through right off the bat is the Holy Grail. And because you're talking about symbols, and I feel like the Holy Grail I mean, for many people, it is a symbol. It's a symbol of their deepest longings, like that which they hope to one day discover. And I one thing I love to talk about, especially with the Arthurian legends, in the stories, usually, not usually, always, only someone who is worthy can find the Grail. And
Mm.
throughout the ages, throughout the centuries, there have been knights, there have been so many people who have
Oh
sought the
yeah.
Grail, but it only reveals itself to those who are truly worthy of heart, pure of heart. And I just feel like that's one thing we talk about. Like I believe the Holy Grail is like it's an actual like sacred, sacred object. But like I
Hmm.
mythic level, on a symbolic level, all of us who go on this, like all of us who go on a spiritual quest, we are all spiritual seekers. We all seek the Holy Grail. And it's funny because at the end of the day, again, like I know that this is a cliche thing at this point, but it's like the journey was the Grail. The journey was the treasure. And I'm also really hearing it's like the journey, it's also the light. So it's like the
Mm, yeah.
on the sacred journey, the more that we come into, I feel like communion with the highest light of our soul. And so it's like the Grail is revealing itself to us before we even lay eyes on it, because the Grail is pure light. It is pure light. And as we are seeking it, we don't see it. And yet it is always lighting our path, drawing us forward, drawing us toward it. And I just,
Mm.
that is something I'm wanting to bring through because I know this beautiful event like Gaian Myths, like weaving ancient future timelines. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, I have to speak at this. And I just like felt chills and goosebumps. And I think that's the whole thing is these ancient stories that we have put, in the past, we relegated them to the past. Actually, no, they were seated there for this time now. They are mythic teachers. The stories are the teachers. These symbols, the Grail, has existed throughout the eons, throughout the ages, calling all seekers, all who were noble of heart, to rise when the time was right. And that time is now.
Hmm. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you feel is some of the threads in this entire legend? And I'm almost feel called to say it's a legacy too. So what are the threads that we can take from these ancient tales to weave into the now?
I'm really just like, while I'm here with you, I just keep hearing the new earth. And I think one of the things about the Arthurian legends in particular, it just like, seems to that's my focus. I know there are a couple other stories we want to touch on in this call, but right now I'm really feeling this call to speak about Camelot. And it's the Camelot and the Knights of the Round Table, this idea of equality. And like, as we
Hmm.
enter really firmly into the Aquarian age, I believe the time that this actually airs, I think that there's some powerful thing where I think it's like Aquarius moves into Pluto. There's some kind of really powerful shift with the energy of Aquarius. And so that really is this power to the people energy. It is this moment where we get to take our seats at the round table. And so it is no longer that top down hierarchy. And I feel like specifically when we're talking about what are we teasing from these ancient stories, like Arthur really, even though he was the leader, he stood for all men and women to be equal. And I'm saying women here because even though that might not be what is told in the tales, we have Morgan Le Fay, we have Guinevere, like we have the Lady of the Lake. There are a lot of powerful ladies in these stories. And I share this because I really do feel like what's coming is this age of radical equality. Should we choose to step into it? Should we choose to embrace that? And the same way that I say that we can connect with the Holy Grail on the inner planes, I too feel that with King Arthur. And it doesn't just have to be like in meditation on the inner planes, but literally when you watch a King Arthur movie or you read a story with him, he is really that being of light, that like he is like this herald for the new earth. And I just
Hmm.
really feel like the seeds of Camelot, though when we look back in time, it's like, oh, but it looks like Camelot fell. It didn't, because it lived on in our hearts. It lived on in our hearts. That seed was there and could not be lost. And so that's really, I feel like, one of the essential threads. It's this power to the people. It's us all becoming the knights, I'm hearing the goddesses of the round table, the knights,
Yeah.
the goddesses, the kings, the queens of the round table. and we all step into our power. Not there's someone else more powerful than me. Not it's not my time yet. It is your time. It is now, and you have the power.
Mm, it's beautiful. I just had another interview um, with a speaker who was all about politics of the new earth. And so I feel that there's just a thread being woven between those two interviews where I might go back to him and say, hey, you might want to look at the King Arthur tale again. So there's quite something here.
Yeah, no, I absolutely feel that because I think that the world is all one. I mean, I know we know that, but it's funny because sometimes we put ourselves in boxes. It's like, oh, we are the spiritual leaders over here. And then they're like the people who are really in politics and they're over there. And actually, like, I really do feel there are going to be a lot of people like, divinely appointed who are in politics who are going to really be guided, by God, by spirit to really step into a whole nother level of leadership. And I really feel like I know this event, like one of your desires is to really just like create a light that goes like throughout the earth and like everyone like is like feeling the impact of that light. And I just really feel that's going to ripple out to the politicians, that's going to ripple out to people in high places. And so I really just like feel called to once more share that message of the ripple effect and that like we are all one. Is that
Mm,
all oneness? Because like when one person steps into their power, we all step into our power. And so that's just really what I'm feeling, the threads of the politics of the new earth. It cannot be it's interesting. I feel like there is a lot of social awareness now. Like there are the people who are more disenfranchised. And like I think there's like all these people who are trying to save them. And not that that's bad. I know that it comes from a good place, but I feel like what we need to do is just like there's no more trying to save everyone. We need to really show people they have this power. Because as long as
yeah.
we're trying to save somebody, we keep them in that position of them not having the power that is the birthright of their soul. And sometimes people aren't totally ready to acknowledge the power that lies within them, but we can hold that space of knowing, that space of knowing
Mm,
one day your soul will claim this power that was never lost, that was always there. And so I feel like it's also us. What I'm getting is, I think, my guides and my higher soul are wanting to impart this wisdom of like even in the way that we interact with the world, sometimes we really interact like this person is higher class, this person is rich, this person is poor, and we put those labels on, but really we are being called to see the world through God's eyes, to see like the Christ within all. And I really feel that as we come to do that, that is part of the awakening of the new earth. And I don't usually use that phrase that, seeing the Christ within all, but that's what kind of came through. I feel like if that doesn't resonate, you could do like seeing the God or goddess within all.
yeah.
And I really feel that it's like us holding others high instead of seeing different people as marginalized, different people as needing to be saved. It's, that's the thing with King Arthur. It's like, yes, he was the knight and he went into battle, but he fought for the people. And it's like, and it's interesting. I feel this, it's like he stood for them. And that's the whole thing is I feel that every single person listening to this, what are you being called to stand for? Even if
Yeah.
it's not marching into battle, you know, what frequencies, what energy are you cultivating? What are you standing for?
That's beautiful. And I want to add something because to me, the original template of the king, like the frequency and vibration, it's the people, but it's also the land, right? And so now is also the time that we realize like what we are or what we've been doing to that planet. And it's time to shift it.
Yes, absolutely. That's like what's coming through is that there's a phrase that not many people know. It's called the divine right of kings. And this is a concept.
Mm.
The land picks the king or the queen.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the land is the one, like when you incarnate, the land picked you to be there. And it's interesting because we don't always feel that. And I want to just like kind of bring this message through that everyone is a king or queen of the place that they live. And it's so interesting because when I first connected, before we had this call, like I don't know if you remember, but I was telling you that I had felt a disconnection with the land, with the place where I live. And I live in New Jersey, right next to New York City. And my whole life, I kind of rejected this area. And it's so funny because I started to hear songs like in my head from when I was in high school, like my high school alma mater. The place I live is called Hackensack. And so it was like there would be like songs like in praise of Hackensack. And I was like, why is this coming through? And I realized it was actually the land. The land was like
Mm.
speaking to me, like, love me, honor me.
Yeah.
I would look outside and I was like, I just see concrete. I see, and I would see the wasteland. And this is also kind of tied to the legends of the Holy Grail, because part of the idea of the Holy Grail is it's supposed to restore paradise. It's supposed to restore Eden from the wasteland. And so for me, I think part of the reason I resonate so much with this story is I grew up right next to New York City. I just see concrete everywhere. And so I'd be like, I'm in this wasteland, like, and it's so funny because I could hear the land speaking to me, like not even speaking, like singing to me, serenading me, like, love me because you can hear me. Love me because I've
Mm.
chosen you to be here. And that's one thing that I feel like we do sometimes, or I can just maybe just speak for myself. I know I kind of reject it, even though I might have a tiny little backyard. Part of me rejected this land. And the thing is, the land is calling out to be loved, honored, and cherished. And I realize that, like, when I go out there, it's like I am here. It's like the divine right of kings or divine right of queens, if you will. Like, I am
Queens.
divinely appointed, I am divinely chosen for this. And so I just want to like impart that. And another thing I also kind of came through me this morning. It's funny because I know a lot of people, especially kind of like when they're looking for love, they're like, oh, I want to be chosen. And it's interesting because I had this thing come through from spirit. I was like, oh my God, like I am chosen. Like it's like the earth chose me to be here
Chose
at this
you.
time. I am complete. It's like, so it's just something that I'm wanting to, bring through. Like, you were already chosen. The divine already chose you to be here. And so you are so chosen and you are so loved by the land itself.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just let that sink in for everybody. Uh, one of the things that has been coming up for me the last couple of days was that we need to stop thinking of myths just as myths and like accept them as part of our history or herstory and what we can learn from that. And so I'm just curious how that resonates with you or what you have to say to that.
Yeah, and absolutely, because I think a lot of the myths are true. The whole thing is a lot of the things it's like, oh, that's not real. No, that's real. That happened. So I think that's one thing too, is like really reclaiming, because a lot of, I mean, one thing that people talk about, it's like, oh, it's make believe. One thing I say is it's make believe because it makes you believe. So I really
Mm.
love that. And I share that because, like, for example, the Arthurian legends, even if you go to like Avalon, there are different people there who will say, maybe King Arthur wasn't really real. Maybe like, and it's like one of those things that these stories have now been relegated to myth because we cannot physically prove that he was, that he was a king who walked the earth. And it doesn't really matter because, like, this is not just a myth. This is, this is a legend. You brought this up. You said this is a legacy. Why do we tell these stories if there was not some great leader who literally inspired our hearts, who changed the course of history slash her story? Like, and so that's the whole thing is I really do feel there's truth to the myths. Even if you look at, it's interesting, like the story of like, Jesus, it is very mythic. It's like, it literally feels like a story. Even when he is condemned, it's like originally like Pontius Pilate is like, oh, I don't want to judge him. And he sends him, I think it's to like King Herod. And like, there's almost like three different places. And this is in stories, three is a sacred number. And so it's interesting, like he literally goes three different places because no one wants to judge this son of God. And finally, at last, like Pontius Pilate lets the people decide. And like there's this really ceremonial moments where like the people, they want his blood, and he gets this beautiful bowl of water and he's like, I washed my hands of this. Like this is your choice and I washed my hands of this. And why do I bring this up? I bring this up because Here, this is almost like a bit of magic here. The water is literally purifying him, but it's also a mythic moment. So even when we look at this story, it's funny because this happened. We know there was a man, Jesus Christ, who lived and walked this earth. And yet, even the way that we remember his legacy on our planet, it is a mythic story. And that's the whole thing is we are all players in this epic story that God the divine is telling. And the way I like to talk about it, it is a never-ending story. It is a never-ending story. And so when you're like, oh, that's make believe, it's like, that's all this is. This is just this one never-ending, delicious experience of life. And so it's like the myths are not make believe, nothing is make believe. Everything is a story that is woven by God without and God within. So that's how I feel about that. Hopefully that answers your
Yeah.
question. To answer.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for bringing up the never-ending story. I love that story. I loved it. Do, do you guys know that too? Was that
Know the
translated? I
story.
think so
Yes,
it
we know
was.
that
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I love that story, and I also had that kind of come through. I was doing it was like a 6 month course, and it was interesting because one of the things that came through when I was working with these like Indian goddesses, it was this idea of the never ending story, and it's like especially because like in Hinduism, it's like you just like, oh wait, this lifetime's over. I'm incarnating again. And so it's like for those gods and goddesses, like their incarnations don't end. It is this never-ending story. And it was funny because it really was actually a goddess, Saraswati, who brought
Mm.
that fruits to me, that transmission. And she was like, no, see this, like this kind of the way that we incarnate and the stories just don't end. That's all your reality. That's the reality that we're living, but also for anyone who's listening who is a writer or a storyteller, just recognize that even if you tell a story and like you say the end, it's really not the end. You've just you've chosen to stop it there. But like the next second the character takes a breath, the story begins anew.
This begins anew. Oh, wow. Yes.
So there really is an infinity to these legends, an infinity to these tales.
Mm. You've spoken to so much, and I'm curious, how how do you teach, or from your experience, like how can we connect more deeply on a conscious level, maybe when reading through these or hearing, listening to these myths and stories on a soul level to what the codes that are in there?
I think it's finding yourself within every character and finding yourself in the character that calls to you. Because on a soul level, like all of us have a mythic self. So for me, like my mythic self is like the queen. It's like I'm always whenever I read a story, there's a queen. I'm like, oh my god, and I like have this like super resonance. But it's interesting because I'm always curious when I read stories. I also resonate with the knight, or the young adventurer who's like just getting their sea legs. And it's interesting because it's almost like if you go like deep, deep within our soul, it's like it's all that kind of like archetypal templates. And I really feel like these are God templates. That's because people say like, oh, it's archetypes, and like they think of it as a human construction. No, they're God constructions. And so it's kind of like finding within you, because if you look at I know there's more than just the hero's journey. There are actually new templates like beyond Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. There's like the heroine's journey. I believe there are actually probably a lot more. But in the standard hero's journey, there is the hero. They get the call to adventure. They refuse the call to adventure because it's too scary and out of their comfort zone. Then the mentor comes along. And like the mentor, like, basically gives them the green light to embark on this quest that before would have seemed like too much. Usually, then at some point, they lose the mentor and have to come into their own power to complete the quest. And I share this because all of us have experiences being that new person on the adventure, like being like, oh my God, how could I go into that brave new world? And so it's like when you are watching something, or if you're reading a book, and so like really connecting, I say like as that character, really as that character, because on a fundamental soul level, we're all one. But it's like there is a transmission. I really believe that any book you read, any movie you watch, there is a soul transmission that is happening in that space. And I also feel that we have all been the mentor. And that's really the beauty when we watch an epic story. And I just keep thinking again of, like, the King Arthur stories with Merlin. Merlin is the mentor, Guinevere is the beloved. It's like we find ourselves in all of these characters, and they have lessons for us. And two different people can watch the same movie or read the same book, and they will walk away with totally different lessons that they've taken, because the story itself is a living thing. The story is a living thing that literally whispers in the ears of all who experience it. So
Mm.
everyone gets the medicine, everyone gets exactly what they need, because this is the divine whispering in your ear. So the story is divine. The story is the divine in action. The story is a divine structure. The story is made of such things as creation itself.
I just let your words penetrate my being. I'm like, I can feel the vibration.
I'm so glad. I have so much love for all these stories. But what I really feel called right now to invite the audience to think for a second, it's like your mythic self. And like, I just feel like all of us have, like, it's like an archetype that we connect with the most. Some people, they connect more with that kind of mage energy that's kind of more magical. Others, it might be the sage, that wise woman. And I think that's the whole thing when you're looking at, like, what stories should I watch? It's like, look for the archetypes that are calling to you, because they have lessons for you. They have lessons to impact your embodiment. And it's so funny. I could just share this. A couple of days ago, maybe like a week ago, I was in meditation, and out of nowhere, I heard this phrase. It's so silly. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but it was like Xena Warrior Princess. And I was like, this was a show from the 90s that I remember I saw like an episode of when I was like a kid, and it scared me. So I turned it off. I was like, oh no, it's so scary. And it was so funny because I had this understanding that, like, there were characters, like there was some kind of mythic transmission that would happen if I watched the show now as an adult. There was something in there I was meant to receive. So I haven't started watching it yet, but it came through a meditation so clearly. I was like, okay. And I found out that, like, in that show, there's like one character who is the warrior princess. So there's that royal energy, that royal code, but she's also like the knight or the warrior. And then there is a sidekick who is a bard or a storyteller. So it makes sense to me why my soul would be called to watch that, because those, it's like they are going to be, I don't know what they're going to be teaching me, but I know that there is something that they're going to help me with my embodiment here. And so
Yeah.
that's really like what I'm feeling. I think we all, when we talk about, getting further in our lives, we kind of like to see, like, what would my future self say, or what would my future self, like, what advice would they give me? And I feel like instead of necessarily looking for your future self out there, look for your future self in the myths. Like, look for your future self in the legends and the tales and the stories, because like they are just contributing to your embodiment here. So
Yeah.
really see characters in these myths and these stories as having sacred wisdom for you, as not just being something out there, but being the teachers for you to really embody that here on earth in this lifetime.
Yeah. 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 And one thing I want to say about the archetypes that you touched on, because I work a lot with archetypes as well, and I do see them as consciousness that are being embodied through us. So it makes a lot of sense what you said to me. I can feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I also wanted to say, no, it's just interesting with the archetypes, because I feel like there has been a lot of people mostly think of them kind of connected to like just Carl Jung or Joseph Campbell. And I think a lot of people listening to the summit may be like a lot of women. And so there is a kind of like, I think there's a bias in a lot of the stories that we tell. There is more of a bias, like focusing on men. And I just really feel that, we women, I know that sometimes we have a very different timeline. And I feel called, because I think there are some people who might not be familiar with this. There is another kind of story arc. It's called the heroine's journey. And this is a different template that, some people may be familiar with, but it's really kind of paralleling the story of Inanna. And so like she is this beautiful, it's like Sumerian, Babylonian, goddess who she is like at the height of her, she's like the embodiment of sexual power, the embodiment of sovereignty. And then she ends up descending into the underworld. And it's interesting because like when she emerges, she is more powerful. You know, like she's more powerful than she ever had been before. But when she goes down to the underworld, she has to remove like every piece of clothing. She literally she's like hung. It's one of those moments where it's like all is lost. And the reason I share this is because I think for everyone listening to this, I know if you are here in this lifetime, there has been a moment for you in the last 5 years where it's been like, all is lost. How do I go on? And that's the whole thing is I really feel like these stories, these characters like Inanna, another being that really wanted to presence herself today is actually Persephone from the Greek pantheon. And it's interesting because these are characters that descends it into the depths, descends it into darkness, and then they rose. And so really, I think this is part of what we're talking about when we talk about these this weaving of ancient and future timelines. It's that recognition that maybe in the past timeline, maybe there was what appeared to be a fall. This kind of relates back to Eden. There appeared to be a fall. There was some kind of descent into darkness. But here today, this is the flip side of the myth. At the end of the day, Inanna rises. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, she returns. And I feel the same thing, even though Persephone does choose to spend half of the year in the underworld with Hades. It's interesting, though, because once she goes into the underworld, she becomes the integration of shadow and light. And so there really is, again, that's kind of what's coming through here is for the women who are listening, even the men, um, it's this understanding that there's so many layers and so much depth to these legends. But what I really feel for the women here, it's recognizing that even if you have been in shadow, the light is still here. Not just still here, the light is now. The light is happening right here, right now. It is calling you. It has called you to this moment, to this sacred space. And it is time to rise up in that queen, in that goddess embodiment.
Yeah, so much. And it is in the darkness where we actually get to see the light the most.
Ooh, I love that. I felt that when you said that. I love that. Oh, that's gorgeous.
So you spoke about the journey of the descent. Let's speak about the journey of ascent, which to me very much resembles the restoration of the template of the Garden of Eden. So how would that look like?
Well, I really feel it's almost like every single person taking responsibility for making this world more beautiful. And there's a story that I feel called to share. It's a children's book story. You might be familiar with it. I wish I could remember the name, but off the top of my head, I'll just tell you what I remember. When I was a little girl, this was my favorite story. And there is a small child, and her grandfather gives her three pieces of advice. And he says, there are three things you must do. You must travel the world. You must travel the world. I think he says you must like make many friends, and you must do something to make the world more beautiful. And
Hmm.
so she does the first two things, like she travels and like she does the first two things. And then it's like toward the end of her life that she's like, I promised my grandfather I would do something to make the world more beautiful. But for the life of me, I don't know what that could be. And then one winter she gets sick and she's always planting flowers, but this one winter, this one winter into spring, she's too sick to plant any flowers. And she feels like, oh my God, my beautiful garden, like it's all for naught. And she goes and she looks and she sees that actually the seeds from the flowers she planted the year before, they have flown through the air and they have spread.
No.
And she realizes, and they're like the flowers in question, they're like these beautiful, like lupine, like larkspur, like those like almost like dragonfly, like dragon snap plants that are so beautiful. And she sees them all over the hillsides. And she knows like
Oh.
them, she knows that they have spread everywhere. And she's like, "Oh, at last, I know what to do to make the world more beautiful." And so she becomes known as like the lupine lady. And she just like, plants the flowers everywhere. And I don't know if I don't think the name of the book is The Lupine Lady, but at the very end, like the last page of a little boy that comes up to her and like she puts him on her knee and she says the same three things to him. Now you must promise me you will find a way to make the world more beautiful. And I share that with you because such a small thing. such a small thing. And yet with that, there is such epic change. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I wanted to bring through, so that's like, to me, it's like literally bringing back Eden, like
I
that with,
love it.
but there's also what I feel called to share is like the Eden consciousness. And so if you're tending everything in the outer world, it's not enough, because like it's like if you can make your thoughts more pristine, more immaculate. That's one of the codes that I've really received. Is I used to like kind of miscreate without realizing it. Like I would not mean to think of like, oh, this is the worst case scenario, or like, oh, like those kinds of more sabotaging thoughts, because you're like, oh, that's just me being human. But at the end of the day, it's like you are this God generator, and everything that's coming from you is like literally impacting the creation. And so it's this Eden consciousness that we can step back into. And for that, like it really is like I feel like almost called in this moment to just do like a like 2-minute mini activation to help people open up once more to Eden
Yes,
consciousness.
please. Yes.
Yeah, because I was like, I could talk about it, but I feel like people like need to have almost like a direct
It's more powerful to feel it. Yeah.
experience to water. Okay. So I have no idea what's going to happen here. But I invite everyone who's listening to just like close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths. And I'd like you to imagine that there are beautiful, glorious roots coming out the base of your feet, and really feel those beautiful roots shooting down, down, down to the center of the earth, and really just holding on to the crystalline heart, the crystalline core of Mother Earth. Feel yourself grounded and secure. And as those roots wrap around the heart, the center of Mother Earth, actually see those roots sprouting back up. And they sprout, and all of a sudden, there is the smallest sapling. And that sapling grows bigger and bigger into the most beautiful plant you have ever seen. Maybe this is a tree, maybe this is a flower, but it seems to grow in infinite beauty. And as it grows, I invite you to now see yourself standing beside it. This beautiful plant seems to form a bridge to the heavens, growing bigger and bigger, larger and larger. And you seem to hear a voice, the soul of the world, the soul of the earth itself, inviting you to step onto this bridge. For this plant is inviting you to walk the sacred path. You know that you're not hurting the plant by stepping up. And as you step up onto this beautiful bridge, it is suddenly cascading with lights. Everywhere you walk, every step, there is more and more light. And as you walk, the bridge just seems to grow. Everywhere around you is more and more green, green vines. You see flowers. This is a beautiful bridge that does not stop growing. And as you keep walking, the light seems to get brighter and brighter. And there before you, in the distance, you see a holy oasis. There is a great gate made of golden metal. This is what's holding the Garden of Eden. You walk closer and closer, and all of a sudden, the doors to the gate open without you even so much as touching them. For Eden is open to you here and now. I invite you to walk to the end of this beautiful bridge. The very, very end, you see the gates, the garden, and you walk inside. This is the most lush, beautiful place you have ever beheld. And yet it is something that you have always known and your heart was there. And I invite you to see the waterfalls of this place, the lush, fresh flowers, see the bushes, and there are little fairies, fairies that fly from bush to bush. Everywhere you go in this garden, it just seems to get more and more magnificent. Everything grows before your very eyes, and you are guided toward a beautiful pool that is cerulean blue at the base of a gorgeous waterfall. You feel something in your heart move you to move over to the pool, to dip your feet in one by one at a time. You look up, and there above the pool is this glorious waterfall. And you are invited, if you so choose, to move into these holy waters, to move under the waterfall itself, and really feel yourself bathed in these frequencies of Eden. We are calling in the highest timeline for everyone listening to this, their Eden timeline, the Eden codes, the Eden frequencies. We call them forth now. We call them forth softly. We call upon the most immaculate coding for their lives. And I invite you to really just stand beneath this holy waterfall. And we open here in this space to God, the divine, to Goddess, to the creation. Pour in the energy of Eden. Pour in Eden consciousness. Here in this space, we call in a sacred attunement, an activation, a remembrance of what it is to know Eden in all areas of your life, of what it is to know Eden in your heart, Eden in your mind. And all of a sudden, the waterfall is also made of golden lights. And you feel this light pouring down into your crown chakra, into your consciousness. You feel yourself bathing in the cerulean light. And suddenly, there is a figure in the garden that walks towards you. And I invite you to see who this figure might be. Maybe this is a loved one. Maybe this is a grandmother or a grandfather, but there is someone here who is waiting for you. Maybe it's a goddess, but they are here with sacred wisdom, with sacred information for how you will move into this new earth, for how you will step into your new timeline of light, this timeline of Eden and sacred love. Just take a moment to really look at this figure, this guide that has come here to the Garden of Eden to be with you. And see what wisdom, what medicine they have for you in this space. Open to receive a symbol, a message, a download, or transmission. Beautiful. And now this wonderful being helps you out of the pool. And you just both look at this gorgeous Garden of Eden. And as you look, both of your hearts are lit up by the same light that powers the sun. You feel your light glowing so brightly. You see the heart of the person who has come here as your guide also glowing so brightly. Both hearts light together. And the light between the two hearts merges, almost forming a braid, weaving through the garden. And all around you, the garden seems to grow. The plants grow even larger. The flowers bloom even bigger. Know that you are one with this space, your heart, your soul eternally woven with the sacred geometry, the sacred frequencies of this place. And now, all of a sudden, before your very eyes, a flower blooms. It starts out very low to the ground and gets bigger and bigger, blooming before your eyes. And this flower, this is a gift from the garden to you. I invite you to move closer, to smell this flower. And if you would like, to take this flower with you. No, the garden will always be here, ready to share its secrets, its wisdom, ready to offer you ancient healing. For you are ready now to bring Eden with you into the world. You are ready to bring this consciousness, this divine understanding with you now, wherever you go. Before you leave, open to receive one last transmission from the Garden of Eden, one last transmission of Eden consciousness. And you can see yourself surrounded by mist, almost a light peach colored mist with glints of gold that bathes you in its healing frequencies. The garden has one last message for you. It says, it is time to stop thinking about just healing. It is time to start living. It is time to thrive. Look around at this garden. The garden takes on this beautiful voice. It says, look around, see me, know me, see how I thrive. Take this knowledge, take this with you, and be this in the world. Open your heart, your soul to the knowing of what it is to truly live, of what it is to truly thrive, to know bliss and joy, harmony. And now take this with you. Take this sacred flower, for it contains all of my wisdom. Take all of these sacred energetic attunements, take all of them with you, bring it forth into the world, and bring Eden to all who need it. With that, you know it is your time to go. See if there are any final messages that come through from the garden itself or from the guide who came to offer you wisdom. Beautiful. And now walk through the gates once more. Walk once more down that beautiful bridge, taking every step, feeling more and more light as you find yourself heading back to the earth plane, once more walking on the grass where you first began today's journey. You look back in the direction from which you came, grateful for all you received, grateful for all you experienced. And now I invite you to take one last deep breath and feel yourself transported back through time and space to the room where you first began today's journey. I invite you to take a couple of deep breaths. Move your hands together. You might want to rub your feet against the floor. Take another deep breath and really just come back to the sacred space.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That was beautiful. Thank you.
I'm so glad. I was like, I don't know what's happening. Where we're going. So like, I had the feeling that we might go to Eden, but I thought we were going to be there like 2 minutes. Um, I don't know.
No, let's stay there longer.
They're like, no, we want you to
Oh,
really integrate these frequencies. Um, I'm just curious how that was for you because I'm just curious if the garden had any messages for you.
so in general, when I connect to the consciousness, for me, what is coming through always is rainbows. And
Ooh,
this time it was it was like the most colorful, radiant rainbows that I've ever seen. Like an all different candy cotton color style to so it was very colorful. It was very vibrant and vivid, like lush greenery, and a very playful energy. So lots of um, mythical beings that might not even live on that plane like physically anymore, but that we know that are up there and that their vibrancy and frequency is through that Eden template also being transported onto Earth.
I love that. That is so beautiful. And when it's kind of coming through, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people go on these guided journeys and they might see like all different beautiful colors and mythic creatures, but they're like, how do I bring that with me? And so I really feel like the invitation is like when you go on these sacred journeys, if you listen to this activation again, you might want to really ask your guide or ask the garden, what can I do to bring this with me, into the 3D world? And one that kind of came through for me last couple months, my family, like my whole childhood, we've used like Ziploc bags. And it's like, and I had this consciousness. I was like, these are not biodegradable. They take like 1,000 years like to disintegrate. And it hit me that it was no longer in alignment from because it's something so simple that I was like, wait, it's one thing that I love to talk about. I also connected to the garden and like kind of, immaculate consciousness is like integrity. And a lot of times people think of integrity as more connected to like a moral code. But it actually in its origin, it means wholeness. And so for
Yeah.
me, it's kind of like you being integrated, like whole and complete, like every single part of you is in alignment. And so for me, I realized that actually it was no longer an integrity for me to use like these Ziploc bags. Even though it's such a small thing, it wasn't contributing to like the woman that I have become, like this more aware, more conscious being that's like, actually, I know I'm connected to every blade of grass and every flower on this earth. I can't use this anymore.
Yeah.
And little
Yeah.
things like that, that is how we can really start to like bring Eden into our 3D lives because we make these choices, and it's these small choices that make all the ripple.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking into that. Yeah. And sometimes I feel that like the story that you told with the girl, like we crack up our heads about like what is it or what can I do, but and then we forget about the daily, like really simple little things.
Yes, it's so funny because I was just thinking, like, I think I told another story about ripples, and yes, that was it. It was over. And I think that's the whole thing is like, we're like, oh, we're here to like build the new earth. And people are like, what is that? And it's like, and it sounds so big. It almost feels too big, I think, for a lot of people. And that's why what we're doing here, building that new earth, it has a mythic quality to it. It does have a very mythic quality. And that's because I think the mythic energy is a larger than life energy. So what we're doing, we say we're building new earth. It's like, oh, are we really? And like, it's kind of just, it seems at first like it's kind of a nice idea, but are we really doing that? And it's like these little choices that we make. And I'm really also feeling another ping from my guides and my soul to remind you once more, this idea of Eden consciousness. This is something I'd like to encourage everyone listening to this to really step into your highest timeline for you. And your highest timeline for you is the highest timeline for the earth. It's all connected, but I really mean in the most like loving way. Like I want anyone listening to this, I want you to step into your greatest bliss, your greatest joy, your highest destiny. And really, the way that I feel like we can do that is by accessing more of that Eden consciousness. And so that's anytime have more of those sabotaging thoughts. It could be something simple like, I don't like the way I look today. And it's almost like, how would your God self, your mythic self, what would they say? It's like, and it's
Hmm.
almost like rewriting the thought. And I can say this because for me, this is something that I've really come into the last few months to really amplify like my impact in the world, to really like, I don't like to say boost my manifestations, but just I'll say to boost my power to create. And I can share this more with love. I would always have these thoughts like, oh, I don't deserve love. I'm never going to have love. And all of a sudden, once I started working more with Eden consciousness, I now have this new mantra that I didn't even think. It just like the divine downloaded it into me, which is like, I am destined for epic love. And I share that and so now it's like, oh, and it doesn't really matter the 3D manifestation because I'm like, oh, now that's the thing that's like rolling in my head. I'm like, I'm destined for epic love. This is great. And I share this because that's the Eden consciousness. It's like, it's not looking at everything that went wrong in the past. It's like, actually, what is the immaculate reality that I most desire to?
Hmm.
And can I align my consciousness with that immaculate reality? And if it's hard, can I let go and invite the divine in? And those moments where it's really challenging and you're like really caught up in like the old story or more of that ego grip, that's the moment where what I do is just like, God, come into my
Yeah.
consciousness, pour into me, pour me into this Eden consciousness. Let me remember my truth. And so that's just something that I wanted to share before we, close everything. I just feel like that consciousness piece is so important.
It is. And, I just want to add to that. Ultimately, you are love. Like, we are love. And the more we can vibrate at that frequency, the more we also like invite that consciousness, that frequency match into our lives.
Thank you. I love that. I feel like that was supposed to be spoken to space. Thank you. Like you're like, no, like universe, like, no, we're not leaving without her saying that. Oh, I love that. So for how I don't even know how long we've been talking here. Okay, I think we're good. I'm not sure if you have any more questions.
Well, I just want to ask you because I also know that you have to share a lot and that there is quite some things that you wanted to touch on. But is there anything before we wrap it up that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I had like a lot of stuff that I was gonna say today, but like, okay, the universe kind of picked what I was gonna share. But one thing that like I wanted to share is the idea. It's called like the anima mundi, and so this is the idea of the soul of the world. And so this idea of the soul of the world exists in cultures like throughout time. And so like nowadays we, we really kind of connect with Mother Earth. We'll call her Gaia. Some people call her Tara. It's like one of those things that like we've really personified her more as a goddess. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really feel that sometimes then I'm kind of like seeing her almost like as a being. And even though she is a being, what I really want to invite you to connect with is this Anima Mundi, the soul of the earth. And that's kind of like, there was a moment, I think, in the activation, I believe that you did kind of connect for a second with that soul of the earth. And so I invite you, like, when you go outside, when you listen to, so anyone who is like talking about the world, be it like they're talking about trees or like the flowers they plant in their garden, to take a moment and really connect to the soul of the earth, to know that it's not just like, oh, Gaia is this beautiful goddess, but like, know that Gaia has this soul. Like she has this sacred soul, this sacred heart that has seen so much and known so much and loved us all so deep.
Mm, yeah.
And it's connecting to the soul of the being, not just, oh, I connect with this flower, with this blade of grass. I connect with the soul of the earth itself. And I just really feel this desire as we're closing. I just really want to say a quick prayer almost. Just really want to say a prayer to the soul of the earth. Beautiful soul of mighty Gaia, the sacred earth. Please fill every single one of our hearts with love. Love for all of this creation. Love for every plant, every flower. Let us feel love for every tree and every leaf. Let us know you, sacred heart of the earth, sacred soul of Gaia. Let us not just think of you as something far away out there, but let us know you in our heart of hearts. Let us connect with you, the soul of the earth, through the connection we have with our own soul. And beautiful soul of the world, I invite you now to come the tip of all of our auric fields right now and just merge with us for 1 second, that we may feel you, beautiful soul, that we may feel you within us as us. And so I invite everyone here to just like really feel yourself call in the soul of the earth, let her merge with you. Um, if you don't want to do that, you can just invite a blessing. But I really like to invite the soul of the earth to come in, to merge with me, to be one with me, to know how deeply connected we always are to one another. And hopefully, if you're doing that, you feel an expansion, you feel the vastness of her within you. You know that she has always lived inside you. And I just really want to invite you to just stay here for another minute and just feel this expansion, feel this softness, feel this connection to all living things. And whenever you're ready, you can see if she has any wisdom for you, or you can tell her it's time to go. But I just wanted to make sure that we didn't leave without that sacred connection with the soul of the world.
And so it is. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I was like, I hope that was good, because I just suddenly felt her wanting to come in and merge with everyone. So I hope that was good for everyone who, who is here. It's just like a deepening. Because the thing is, like, we all on the deepest levels are being like, none of this is new to us. We all know all of this, but it's just like we get the joy of remembering, we get the joy of experiencing it even more deeply. And I just feel like we just get to, every time that we connect with the earth, the soul of the earth, it's like, it's delicious. Every time we get to know her more and more, it's almost like my grandparents were married 68 years. It's like that kind of thing. It's sometimes
Wow.
it's like, how could, like, it's like, that's a long time. But it's like, but they, like, the love they had for each other never ceased, because every day they got to know each other anew. Every day it was like as if for the first time. And that's what I want to invite everyone here, when you connect with the soul of the earth and you connect with Gaia, when you connect with anyone, just see it like that, as if it were the first time. Just, it's another concept that's coming through. It's this beautiful Hindu concept, Ananda, the bliss of being.
Yeah.
do feel that that's also a lesson the earth would wish us to
Hmm. Whew.
I think that's it. I think the universe is like, okay. But yes, thank you so much for having me. We went to a lot of different places, but I had so much fun here with you today.
Well, we will not let you go before you haven't shared your free gift because I know that it's also something really epic. So just give that um, a few words, please.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, my free gift, for anyone who would like to experience more of this new earth energy, I'm actually doing, it's like a charity event. It's a 3-day interview series, all free. It's called The Treasures of Ireland. And this is really to raise money to reforest Ireland. And, it's really a special event that's going to be full of amazing speakers. We are really celebrating the magic of trees. I have experts talking about fairies, so it is super magical. It's gonna be a like really high magic, sacred container, but at the end of the day, it really is like my intention is that it's a movement. It really is a movement, like that power to the people energy. And I will share a little bit of the reason why I'm doing this. So about a year ago, I came across a charity organization called Wolfgang Reforest. And it's interesting because they had the whole history of British colonization in Ireland. And around 1560, Queen Elizabeth I ordered like the demolition of like all of the trees in Ireland. Of course, they weren't all destroyed, but a lot of them were. And there was a saying at the time, basically the Irish, like they were always rebelling against the crown. And it's like, the Irish, will never submit so long as there are leaves on the trees. And so that was the reason
Wow.
they cut the trees down. It was to break the Irish spirit. And when I first heard of this, I mentioned my connection to the queen energy, and I've had past lives as a queen. And I also was named after Queen Elizabeth. So there's a lot of karmic energy that was stirred up in me when I first read this. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do something to plant more trees. I want to undo this. This was a wrong thing that was done to this place, to the land, to the people. And the trees, like right now, I think that it's only like, I could be wrong, but I think there's only like 2% of Ireland used to be covered with trees. Only 2% of the original tree population remains. So they're
Really? Wow.
to reforest Ireland, and I think it's gaining momentum, and that's why. So this event, it is free for everyone to come to experience like the different speakers, but there will be opportunities to give back and to support like reforesting Ireland. And so it's just something that everyone who wants to come, it's going to be, I think it's January 31st, like to February 2nd. There will also be replays available if you can't make it live. But it's going to be like just beautiful, beautiful speakers. I am so excited for this. It's just going to be so wonderful. And, there will be opportunities if you want to give back or if you just want to experience the magic, feel free to come. There's going to be a lot of mythic storytelling. It's just going to be a beautiful, beautiful event.
That's epic. That's really epic. And I feel it weaves in so beautifully with, the intention of our summit. So I love that the seed is taken further. Thank you for creating that.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. And I did this. I think I'll kind of end here because this was divinely given to me, this idea. And I came up with about a year ago, and I didn't know when it was going to come to fruition, but I knew that spirit, you gotta do this. And I feel like all of us get called at different moments in our lives. Like there's always a way that like we're called to give back. And so it's like it's almost like when the divine calls you, even it might be a big thing, it might be a small thing, but no, the divine is always calling you to make the world a more beautiful place. And so that's just
Mm.
want to impart as we end.
You filled my heart with so much magic, and I hope the hearts of our audience too. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of these stories and yeah, the legacy and the myths and the truth within all of these stories.
Oh,
Thank
it was
you.
a pleasure. And it was just so wonderful to be here with you. You are a beautiful guide, and I've loved every minute of this.
Thank you. Thank you all for watching and listening to this interview as part of Gaian Myths, weaving ancient future timelines. May you find some inspiration and pearls of wisdom to integrate into your own life. And stay tuned for the upcoming interviews with more captivating storytellers, changemakers, and visionaries.